Effective energy policy must be void of political influence and instead ought to be created with the main goal of promoting sector sustainability. The view of Senior Economist Dr. Terrence Farrell. He presented his most recent study titled At a Point of Inflexion, the Downstream Petrochemicals Industry in Trinidad and Tobago on Thursday. He cautioned that a failure to implement the proper policies can see a collapse of the local petrochemicals industry. Janine Browne has more.
Senior Economist Dr. Terrence Farrell says the preoccupation with the challenges related to natural gas supply and pricing has seen little attention being paid on evolutionary strategies to encourage investment in the downstream petrochemical industry.
And as a consequence of that, we saw petrochemicals' contribution to gross domestic product declining from about 7% of GDP down to where it is now, about 3.5% of GDP. We see production of ammonia declining. We see production of methanol declining, as well as urea.
And he says creating the balance the industry needs cannot be left up to the personality of politics.
Whoever becomes the government, whichever political party becomes the government, has to understand that this policy cannot be changed whimsically. And it's not about you smarter than me and you ain't smarter. And it's not about that. Kevin Ramnarine is no smarter than Frankie Can.
And in the midst of contention over government's attempt to amend the Freedom of Information Act, which in part proposes to extend the period of time a state agency has to respond to an information request, Dr. Farrell said access to information is also a challenge in some pockets of the energy industry.
We have here, unfortunately, and I make this point across the board, and it has applied to everybody, including the players in the petrochemical sector, it is that we have a culture of not wanting to give information, of not wanting to share data, that everything is confidential, and so on. And that's not very helpful.
According to Dr. Farrell, the downstream petrochemical industry has contributed some $643 million to the local economy over the last 5 years. Janine Browne, TTT News.